Right now, as you watch this, you're blind. Not metaphorically, literally blind. Multiple times per second, your visual experience goes completely dark. You don't see anything. No blur, no fade, pure blackness. And your brain edits it out so perfectly that you never, ever notice. Over the course of a day, you're functionally blind for approximately 2 hours. This isn't speculation. This is measurable, documented neuroscience. And once you understand how it works, you'll never trust your eyes the same way again. Before we go further, if you want more content that deconstructs how reality actually works, using real science, make sure you're subscribed. This is where we go deep. Now, let's talk about what your brain is hiding from you. You assume you see continuously. That vision flows like a video stream from your eyes to your brain, uninterrupted, frame by frame. This assumption feels so obviously true that questioning it seems absurd. But here's the problem. Your eyes move, constantly, and every time they move, you go blind. Not partially blind, not blurry, completely, utterly blind. Your brain doesn't record these moments. It doesn't register them as gaps. It reconstructs the world seamlessly, editing out the darkness so perfectly that you experience reality as smooth, continuous, unbroken. This isn't a bug, it's fundamental design. Your conscious experience is not a faithful recording of what your sensory organs detect. It's a construction, an edited version, a story your brain tells you about what's happening. And the story leaves out massive chunks of missing data. This matters because it reveals something deeply unsettling about consciousness itself. If you can be blind for 2 hours a day without knowing it, what else is your brain hiding? How much of what you call reality is fabricated? How much of experience is invention rather than perception? Over the next 25 minutes, we're going to examine the specific mechanisms through which your brain creates the illusion of continuous vision. We'll look at real experiments that demonstrate exactly when and how you go blind. We'll explore what this reveals about the nature of consciousness and perception. And we'll investigate what happens when you try to observe these gaps directly. By the end, you'll understand that the seamless visual experience you're having right now is one of the most sophisticated magic tricks in nature, and the magician is you. Let's start with the most obvious and most invisible blindness you experience: saccades. Your eyes move in rapid jumps, called saccades. Right now, as you read this, your eyes aren't gliding smoothly across the text. They're jumping, roughly 3 to 4 times per second. Each jump takes about 20 to 200 milliseconds. And during that jump, you are functionally blind. Your visual cortex suppresses information. This phenomenon is called saccadic masking or saccadic suppression. Here's how researchers discovered this. In the 1960s, scientists started measuring eye movements with precision. They noticed something bizarre. People could not detect changes in a visual scene if those changes occurred during a saccade. You could flip an image, swap colors, move objects. If it happened during the eye movement, subjects reported seeing nothing. Not a flicker, not a blur, nothing. The brain edits it out entirely. One of the most striking demonstrations comes from a simple experiment you can replicate. Look at yourself in a mirror. Stare at your left eye. Now shift your gaze to your right eye. You see your eyes in 2 positions, left, then right, but you never, ever see them moving. You cannot catch your own eyes in motion. Your friend watching you can see your eyes move, but you cannot. Why? Because during the saccade, the moment of movement, you are blind. Your brain suppresses that visual input and fills the gap with a stable image. You experience seeing your left eye, then your right eye, with no movement in between. The movement is deleted from your conscious experience. Now here's where it gets worse. Scientists measured exactly how much time is lost to saccadic suppression. On average, your eyes make 3 to 4 saccades per second when you're actively looking at something. Each saccade suppresses vision for roughly 30 to 50 milliseconds. If you're awake 16 hours a day, and your eyes are moving constantly during active vision, you're blind for cumulative minutes every hour. When you add it up, it's approximately 2 hours per day. 2 hours of complete visual blackout that your brain seamlessly edits out of your experience. The neuroscientist David Eagleman, who studies time perception and consciousness, points out that saccadic suppression reveals something radical about how the brain constructs experience. The brain doesn't just passively receive sensory data, it actively decides what to include and what to exclude from conscious awareness. And what it excludes, you don't just ignore, you don't experience as having been excluded. The gap vanishes, as if it never existed. This leads to the second, even more disturbing discovery, the attentional blink. Researchers discovered that even when your eyes are perfectly still, you can be blind to things directly in front of you. Not because your eyes missed them, because your consciousness did. The classic experiment works like this. Subjects are shown a rapid sequence of letters on a screen, 10 letters per second. Their task is simple. Identify 2 target letters among the stream. Let's say the letter X and the letter O. The X appears. Subjects see it. Then more letters flash by. Then the O appears. Here's the bizarre part. If the O appears within 200 to 500 milliseconds after the X, most people don't see it. The O is right there on the screen. Their eyes are open. Their attention is focused. But they report complete blindness to the O. It's as if it never appeared. This is called the attentional blink. Your consciousness blinks, not your eyes, your awareness. For a half second after detecting one target, you become temporarily blind to the next one. Why? Because consciousness has a processing bottleneck. When your brain commits resources to recognizing and encoding the first target into awareness, it temporarily suppresses new visual input. And during that suppression, you don't see. You don't experience blurriness or distraction. You experience nothing, as if the stimulus didn't exist. The cognitive scientist Stanislas Dehaene, who researches the neural basis of consciousness, describes this as evidence that conscious perception is not automatic. Just because something hits your retina doesn't mean you see it. Seeing requires a secondary process, a process that takes time and resources. And during the moments when that process is occupied, you are perceptually blind. This reveals something profound. Consciousness is not continuous. It's discrete. It operates in pulses, in moments. And between those moments, there are gaps. Gaps you never experience as gaps. Now for the third and most philosophically disturbing mechanism, perceptual filling in. Your brain doesn't just hide gaps, it invents information to cover them. One of the most famous demonstrations involves the blind spot. You have a literal blind spot in each eye, a region of your visual field where the optic nerve connects to the retina. There are no photoreceptors there. When light falls on that spot, you detect nothing, and yet you never see a black hole in your vision. Why? Because your brain fills it in. It looks at the surrounding visual information and fabricates what it thinks should be there. If you're looking at a white wall, it fills the blind spot with white. If you're looking at a patterned surface, it extrapolates the pattern. You don't see the fabrication. You see a seamless, complete visual field. Researchers have tested this extensively. Neuroscientist V.S. Ramachandran conducted experiments where subjects looked at visual stimuli designed to fall partially in the blind spot. The brain didn't leave a gap. It completed the image, drew lines across the void, filled in missing sections, all without any actual sensory input from that region. What this means is staggering. Your visual experience right now contains fabricated information. Information your brain invented, and you cannot tell the difference between what you actually saw and what your brain hallucinated to maintain continuity. This isn't metaphorical. Your brain is literally generating false sensory data and presenting it to your consciousness as if it were real perception. The philosopher Thomas Metzinger, who studies consciousness and the self, argues that this reveals perception is fundamentally illusory, not in a mystical sense, in a mechanical sense. What you experience as seeing the world is actually experiencing a model of the world that your brain constructs, a model that prioritizes continuity and coherence over accuracy. And when there are gaps in the data, the model fills them in, seamlessly, invisibly. Quick note, if you're finding value in this deep dive into how perception actually works and want more content like this, make sure you're subscribed. And if you're noticing you understand this intellectually, but want a structured way to apply these insights about consciousness in your actual life, I created something specific for that gap. It's called the manifestation path. It's a system for moving from understanding to embodiment. Link in the description. I'll leave it there for now. Back to what your brain is hiding. What we've discovered so far is not abstract theory. It's direct, measurable evidence that consciousness constructs experience rather than passively receiving it. But this insight connects with philosophical traditions that have been investigating the nature of perception for millennia. Buddhist philosophy, particularly the Abhidhamma tradition, describes consciousness as arising in discrete moments separated by gaps. What we call continuous experience is actually a rapid succession of momentary arisings, each replacing the previous one so quickly that we perceive continuity. This isn't mysticism. It's a precise phenomenological description that aligns perfectly with modern findings about the attentional blink and the discrete nature of conscious processing. Western phenomenology reached similar conclusions. Edmund Husserl, investigating the structure of time consciousness, argued that what we experience as the present moment is actually a construction that includes retention of the immediate past and anticipation of the immediate future. We don't experience raw now. We experience a synthesized present that the mind assembles from temporal fragments. Again, this maps directly onto how the brain handles saccadic suppression. It doesn't show you the gap. It shows you a constructed continuity that bridges past and future perception. The German philosopher Thomas Metzinger takes this further. He argues that the self is not a thing you have, but a process the brain runs. A transparent model that you cannot see as a model because you are the model. Your visual experience feels direct and unmediated, but it's actually heavily processed, edited, and fabricated. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing a user interface that your brain generates. And like any interface, it hides the underlying complexity to make interaction smooth. Now here's where this becomes experiential rather than theoretical. You can investigate these gaps directly, not by thinking about them, but by observing your own perception. Try this right now. Look at an object in front of you. Really look at it. Now shift your gaze to another object. Notice what you experienced. Did you see your eyes move? No. Did you see a blur between the two objects? No. You saw object 1, then object 2, with no transition. The movement was deleted. Now do it again, but this time try to catch the gap. Try to see the moment between seeing. You can't. Not because you're not trying hard enough, because the gap is excluded from conscious experience. It's not that you miss it. It's that it isn't presented to consciousness at all. Here's another investigation. Close your eyes. Notice that you know your eyes are closed. You experience darkness. Now open your eyes. Notice you experience vision. But where exactly is the boundary between closed and open? Can you find the precise moment when darkness became vision? When you investigate closely, there's no clear line. The experience shifts, but the shift itself is strangely elusive. What you're encountering is the constructed nature of temporal continuity. This connects back to the fundamental paradox we started with. Consciousness seems continuous from the inside, but when you examine the mechanisms, it's revealed to be discontinuous, built from discrete moments, filled with gaps, constantly constructing and reconstructing. The philosopher David Chalmers calls this the hard problem of consciousness. Why is there experience at all? But there's an adjacent question that's equally hard. Why does discontinuous neural processing create the sensation of continuity? Why don't we experience the gaps? One answer comes from predictive processing theory. Your brain is constantly predicting what will happen next based on past experience. When your eyes move, your brain predicts what you'll see after the movement, and it uses that prediction to fill the temporal gap. You don't experience the saccade because your brain already knew what was coming and presented that expectation as if it were perception. If the prediction is close enough to reality, you never notice the substitution. This means your experience of now is actually a mixture of past perception, present sensation, and predicted future. What you think is happening now is actually what your brain thinks should be happening, based on a half second of integration and prediction. You are always living slightly in the past, experiencing a constructed present. And the reason this works, the reason you don't notice, is because your brain has been trained by millions of years of evolution to prioritize functional coherence over perceptual accuracy. It's more useful to experience a stable, continuous world than to experience the chaotic, gap-filled truth. But once you know the truth, you can't unknow it. You can try the mirror experiment again. Look at your left eye. Shift to your right eye. Your brain will still hide the movement, but now you know it's hiding something. And that knowledge changes your relationship to your own experience. Let's bring all of this together. We've seen that saccadic suppression makes you blind multiple times per second, adding up to roughly 2 hours of total darkness per day. We've seen that the attentional blink reveals consciousness operates in discrete moments with gaps in between. We've seen that perceptual filling in means your brain fabricates sensory information to maintain the illusion of continuity. And we've explored how this connects with philosophical investigations into the constructed nature of experience. Now here's the synthesis, the revelation that recontextualizes everything. Consciousness is not a window through which you observe reality. It's a narrative, a story your brain tells about what's happening. And like any story, it has a narrator who decides what to include and what to leave out. The narrator is not you, the conscious experiencer. The narrator is a set of unconscious processes that generate your conscious experience. And the narrator's primary job is not accuracy, it's coherence. It's making sure the story flows smoothly, no jarring cuts, no missing scenes, no awareness of the editing process. This is why you can be blind for 2 hours a day and never notice. The blindness isn't included in the story, it's edited out in post-production, except there is no post-production. The editing happens in real time. You experience the edited version as if it were the original, as if there were no gaps. Consider what this means. Every experience you've ever had, everything you've ever seen, has been processed through this narrative construction system. You have never experienced raw, unfiltered reality. You've only ever experienced your brain's interpretation of reality, an interpretation designed to be useful, not truthful. And the interpretation is so convincing that you never suspect you're experiencing an interpretation at all. This has profound implications. If consciousness constructs continuity where there are gaps, what else is it constructing? The sense that you are a unified self. Is that real, or is that also a narrative? A story the brain tells to make sense of disparate neural processes. The feeling that you have free will and make conscious decisions. Is that real, or is that a post hoc story the brain generates to explain actions that were already initiated unconsciously? The conviction that your memories are accurate records of past events. Is that real, or are memories also constructions, edited and revised each time you recall them? Once you see that consciousness fabricates continuity, you start to suspect it fabricates everything, not maliciously, not to deceive, but functionally, to create an experience that allows you to navigate reality effectively. The paradox we began with was this: consciousness fills gaps without registering that there were gaps to fill. And now we see why that paradox is so significant. It reveals that consciousness is not a transparent medium through which reality shines. It's an opaque construction that presents itself as transparent. You think you're seeing the world, but you're seeing a representation of the world, a representation that hides its own construction process. And the only reason you ever discover this is because science found ways to detect the gaps, to measure the moments when the story breaks down. But in ordinary experience, the construction is perfect, seamless, invisible. You don't notice the blindness because the blindness is not part of the experience your brain is generating for you. This doesn't mean reality is an illusion in some mystical sense. The world exists. Objects are there. Light hits your retina. But your experience of that world, the felt sense of seeing, is an illusion. A useful, functional, evolutionarily successful illusion. And the fact that you just learned about the illusion doesn't make it go away. You can look in the mirror right now, try to catch your eyes moving, and you still won't see it. Because knowledge doesn't change the mechanics. Your brain will keep constructing continuity, whether you believe in that continuity or not. There's a brutal difference between intellectually understanding that you collapse reality and actually living as someone who knows this. Most people watch videos like this, feel the insight, and 3 days later, they're back to the same mental and emotional pattern as always. Why? Because knowledge without embodiment changes nothing. That's exactly the gap that led me to create the manifestation path. It's not a course, it's a structured process of identity reprogramming through 3 progressive workbooks and 28 days of guided daily practice. You'll identify and dismantle the autopilot, map who you are versus who you're becoming, and practice every day until the new identity is no longer effort, but naturalness. Neuroscience plus consciousness plus coherent action. It's not temporary motivation, it's structural change. Link in the description if you want the next insight to actually change how you exist. Here are 2 practices you can use to investigate these principles directly. First practice, the Saccadic observation. Several times today, look in a mirror and try to catch your eyes moving. Try to see the moment between positions. You won't be able to, but the repeated failure to see the gap will make the constructed nature of continuity visceral rather than theoretical. Do this enough and you'll start to notice the strangeness of visual experience itself. Second practice, the perception audit. Pick one object. Look at it for 30 seconds without moving your eyes. Notice how your perception of that object changes, even though the object is static. Notice details appearing that weren't there before. Notice interpretation shifting. This reveals that perception is not passive reception, it's active construction. These practices won't give you magical powers. They'll make you more aware of the mechanics underlying your experience. And awareness is the first step toward living consciously rather than automatically. You've just learned something most people never discover, that the continuity of experience is an illusion, that consciousness is discontinuous, that your brain hides massive gaps in perception and you never, ever notice. This isn't a reason to distrust your senses entirely. Your visual system works. It's functional. It's reliable enough for survival, but it's not transparent. It's not showing you reality as it is. It's showing you a curated, edited, fabricated version designed to keep you alive and oriented. And now you know. You can't unsee this. Every time you move your eyes from now on, some part of you will remember. You just went blind, and your brain covered it up perfectly. Welcome to the other side of the illusion. It's strange here, but at least it's real. If this completely changed how you think about perception and consciousness, leave a like. It helps more people discover that their visual experience is a construction, not a direct window into reality. And drop a comment. What was the most unsettling revelation for you? That you're blind during eye movements? That consciousness operates in discrete moments? Or that your brain fabricates sensory information? Let me know.